Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1995 action film Bad Boys. Now, Bad Boys is one of those movies that I've only seen 2 or 3 times. In fact, the third time that I saw it was the most recent viewing, and that was the first time I had seen the film in a long while. And ultimately, I like the film. I like Bad Boys. I don't love it. I know it has a lot of fans, and even some of my close friends are really big fans of this one. But I do have some issues with it, and I'll explain what they are soon enough. But I still like the film. I find it to be entertaining, fairly fast paced, and it has two really dynamic leads in Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. Now, before I get into the details of this review, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on the concept of Bad Boys, because the concept and the overall story started years prior, decades prior, in fact, with a film called Bulletproof Hearts. Now, I don't know who the original screenwriter was. I don't really know what that information is. I'm not able to really find that off the top of my head or in the research that I have done. But Don Simpson, who would go on to produce Bad Boys along with Jerry Bruckheimer, in the mid to late 80s, Don Simpson got a hold of this project, Bulletproof Hearts, and successfully optioned it to, I believe, Touchstone Pictures, which was a company that was owned by Disney at the time, and they were trying to do more adult-orientated fare for adult audiences under the Touchstone brand. So Bulletproof Hearts fell right in line with that whole sensibility for the studio. Well, the original duo for this film was going to be Dana Carvey and Jon Lovitz. Yes, you heard that right. Dana Carvey and Jon Lovitz were the original Bad Boys. I couldn't believe it myself when I looked it up. And I'm pretty sure that Bulletproof Hearts is going to be more of a comedy and less of an action movie, like something like Real Men with John Ritter and James Belushi, or Running Scared with Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal, something in that vein. It probably wasn't going to be action film first, comedy sort of second. It probably wasn't going to be like that. Because you can't really buy. Could you buy Dana Carvey and Jon Lovitz doing any action sequences? Like, would that even be something that you could remotely take seriously? Probably not. So I think it was just a bad idea from the start to have those two in this kind of movie. But I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't have wanted to have seen the results just to see how much of a train wreck it might have been. But Touchstone was really happy with the concept and thought they were going to have a huge hit on their hands, because Dana Carvey and Jon Lovitz were huge around this time because of their success on SNL. So this was pretty much a done deal. Touchstone was probably getting ready. There was a budget already, put together, and they were going to start shooting soon. They were going to find a director. They were going to do all this stuff. So Don Simpson decides to celebrate in style. So he takes Jon Lovitz and Dana Carvey with him to Vegas to celebrate this occasion. And apparently, Don Simpson is a notorious party man, and he completely turned off Dana Carvey and Jon Lovitz, and they left the project. And Disney also sold the rights to the film to Columbia, and eventually Bulletproof Hearts would be dusted off by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer years later, and would be rewritten and retooled into what would become known as Bad Boys. So that is just a crazy story. I could not believe my eyes when I read it. I was like, "There's no way. This has to be fake. This has to be a hoax." But no, it's true. That's the original Bad Boys were John Lovitz and Dana Carvey. It was going to be some movie called Bulletproof Hearts. Now, that's not the last of the casting differences when it comes to Bad Boys. In fact, the studio was at one point strongly leaning towards casting Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes as the two leads in this film. But I think both of them declined or decided to go in a different route. But I find that really interesting as well, because unlike John Lovitz and Dana Carvey, those two I think would have been fantastic. And I really would have loved to have seen what the end result would have been. Maybe they could have had their own franchise or a different movie that isn't Bad Boys, so you can still have Will Smith and Martin Lawrence get the opportunity to lend their talents to what would go on to become a iconic duo. But I still would have liked to have seen Eddie and Wesley together in a film like this, because they did so great playing off each other in Dolomite Is My Name. So it would have been really cool to see them work together in an action comedy where they are partners and they're on screen together for the majority of the screen time. That would have been really fun to see. But it was not meant to be. Now, apparently Mike Lowry was a character that was originally intended to be portrayed by Arsenio Hall. But Michael Bay saw an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on TV and was like, I want that guy. I want the Fresh Prince. And Arsenio also apparently turned down the role. So the studio went with Will Smith. And according to Martin Lawrence in an article in GQ magazine, he said that Lawrence Fishburne was one of the first choices, also to play Mike Lowry. But that didn't work out, and Will Smith got the role, and the rest is history. Now, I can't see Lawrence Fishburne working, and I definitely cannot see Arsenio Hall working. So it's one of those things where fate would have it, and Will Smith would get the role of Mike Lowry. And he would make it his own, and it would be a breakout role for him, and a big reason for the film's success. The bad boys in this film being young, brash, and a little immature is really what propelled and catapulted this film to a surprise box office success. It's because of these two stars. It's because of Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, and the fact that they were able to tap into the younger audience market. I don't think that Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes would have been able to do the same, and I definitely don't think Arsenio Hall and Martin Lawrence would have been able to do that. So it's one of those things where I feel that it all worked out for the best in the end. Now, Bad Boys is directed by Michael Bay. Now, you all know who Michael Bay is. Bayhem, Mr. Explosions, so on and so forth. But this was his directorial debut. He had done directing before in music videos and commercials, and honestly was a really big, well-known name because of those works. But this was the first film that he ever did. And you can tell. There are moments where you can tell there isn't quite the same polish because he doesn't have the same experience behind the camera directing a movie. Directing a movie is different than directing a music video or an advertisement. And it's one of those things where you definitely can see that this guy doesn't quite know all the ropes yet. That being said, he knows enough that he adds a really great sense of style and flair to the production that makes the movie look like a bigger budget than it is. I mean, Bad Boys was a $19 million production. In 1995, that wasn't a whole lot of money for a summer film or a big movie. Well, it wasn't even really a summer film. It came out in April. But that wasn't really a lot of money. Adjusted to inflation, it's more nowadays than it was in 1995, but $19 million is not what you would call like a big budget production in 95. So with a director like Michael Bay, who knows how to create sleek, stylish visuals because it's something that he made a trademark with his music videos and his advertisements, his experience with that particular kind of aesthetic really did lend itself to this film. That being said, I do feel that it might have benefited from a more experienced director in terms of making the action sequences more consistently engaging and more consistently exciting in terms of how they're shot or in terms of how they're edited and just overall direction in general. But at the same time, I think it also was a fairly low budget for a film like this, so I don't think Bay was really able to do probably as much Bayhem as he would have liked, even with his directorial debut, because he just didn't have the money. But Bay's direction is fine. I don't think it's that much of a negative. I just feel that you can definitely tell that he still is learning the ropes at this particular time. Now, Michael Bay himself, he admits, he says the production was extremely grueling due to script problems. Bay would later call the screenplay a piece of shit. I'm not going to say it's that bad. And budget limits that often meant Bay that would only get a single day to shoot action sequences that would have taken 4 days of work on a more lavishly funded project. There you go. So that's kind of the reason why some of these action sequences look a little bit flat, like the car chase and some of these other things, and the shootouts, is probably because didn't have as much time to shoot them. So now that I know the reasons behind why certain things are the way they are in this movie, I don't really think Bay is at fault for it. Because he did the best that he could with what he knew and with what he had. And even Michael Bay, like, he even admits, like, he really did not like certain shots in the film, like the car chase following the clubhouse sequence, and one shot when a character in the film is thrust from an exploding airplane. And that just makes me feel better, because I don't like the way that the car chase is shot after the clubhouse scene. So it makes me feel a little bit better, because it makes me know that I'm not alone, and the director himself doesn't like the way that scene is shot either. But going to the screenplay by Michael Berry, Jim Mulholland, and Doug Richardson, the script is fine. There are elements to it, though, that I'm not too keen on. I don't really like the whole Mike and Marcus pretending to be one another for a majority of the movie. For a small chunk of the film, that's okay, but I feel it just takes away from the dynamic that the two have that's established early on in the film and in other parts in the movie, because they're separate from each other for a lot of the running time, and we're stuck with Martin Lawrence having this relationship with Téa Leoni's character, and they have some fun bits with one another, but it's not the same dynamic. And I just wanted to see more of the bad boys being bad boys with each other, ribbing one another, so on and so forth. And this whole pretending to be one another subplot takes away from that, and you don't see as much of that because there's this whole thing going on where Marcus has to pretend to be Mike, and there's also a part where Mike goes missing for a little bit because he got knocked out by this one henchman. And so it's just, I don't really care for that part of the script. I think they focused a little bit too much on the pretending to be one another thing, for my tastes. Um, I also kind of feel that the character that Téa Leoni plays, Julie, the way she's written is a little irritating, a little annoying, at least for me personally. Um, Seems pretty clingy, and I don't know. It just didn't seem like. It's just one of those characters that it was just there for me. I wasn't really super big on the character of Julie, um, but I also didn't hate the character either. But there were moments where she got on my nerves, and the whole missing drugs subplot. It's honestly a pretty big cliche, but it could have been worse easily. The whole thing with like the other agency that's watching over stuff, uh, that thing was like, okay, all right. It was just felt like it was just adding extra drama to things that wasn't really necessary. Oh, the department's gonna get shut down if we don't find the drugs. It's just like, I don't know. I just felt it wasn't really needed. But I mean, other than the whole pretending to be each other thing that I thought went on a little bit too long, overall I think the script is fine. Uh, I will say this: a majority of the memorable lines of dialogue and funny, witty banter was improvised by Will Smith or Martin Lawrence or Téa Leoni. So the script is not really the originating factor when it comes to those memorable lines of dialogue, which goes to show you why this film's success is really something that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are integral for. So without them and their abilities to improvise and work with one another and to bounce things off each other, the film wouldn't be as successful. And it definitely wouldn't be as entertaining. Now, this film, like I mentioned, Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, uh, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other cast members. I don't think I can say. I think I'm just butchering his name. My apologies. It's like Tchéky Karyo as the villain Fushan. I actually think he did a really good job. He kind of reminds me of Jurgen Prochnow in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He has the same intensity, and I thought he was a pretty decent villain. I wish he had more screen time, and I wish he had more scenes to really make more of an impact. But that being said, he did a good job as Fouché. Theresa Randle is Teresa Burnett. Great. Really love the dynamic between her and Martin Lawrence. Joe Pantoliano is Captain Conrad Howard. One of his best roles. Just so hilarious. So entertaining to see him freak out and get pissed off at Mike and Marcus. It's just really a riot. And the rest of the cast is fine too. I didn't really care for. Now that I remember, I didn't really care for another aspect of the screenplay, and that's the fact that Fouchet's villains, like his henchmen, were just really wimpy guys. Other than this big muscle guy who takes out Lowry, in my opinion, way too easily. Kind of remind me of the film Get Carter with Stallone when he gets his ass kicked by Mickey Rourke. And unlike that movie, there's not a scene in the film where Will Smith gets to repay the favor and beat his ass. Not that I remember it anyway. So you don't really get the payoff. And Get Carter, at least Stallone gets Mickey later and kicks his ass. But yeah, you had these like it was like a comic relief henchman. There was some fat guy who looked like a extra from The Sopranos before The Sopranos was even a thing. It was just one of those things that was like, I don't. I just thought they were really weak, and I appreciated the fact that they were a little bit different in terms of they weren't your typical henchmen, but I just didn't buy that any of these guys were his most trusted and reliable henchmen. Like one guy can't even take a walk to the local donut shop without catching his breath. You know, it's one of the. I mean, like it just sort of. I you know, that's just me personally. I just think if you're gonna have this kind of thing with like henchmen and whatever, like why not have somebody who, you know, henchmen that are actually intimidating, or you know, you could buy being a foil for your leads. I didn't really feel that way about these characters, but that's just me personally. Um, Overall, solid cast, but definitely the strength lies in the two leads. That's where the film's biggest muscle is with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. Now, one of the other aspects of the film that I really like is the score by Mark Mancina. Such a fantastic, exciting, wonderful score that really gets your heart pumping, gets the adrenaline inducers going. It's a really great score with a lot of memorable moments and bits to it. And I definitely feel the film is considerably better because of it. There are sequences in this movie that the way they're shot and the way they're edited is exciting, but with the score thrown in, it just kicks it up to a whole other level. Uh, so yeah, I can't sing enough praises for Mark Mancina's score. I've always been a fan of this score, and I definitely feel that it's one of the better scores of its era, and from this particular kind of genre of film. The cinematography by Howard Atherton, especially in the shots in Miami and sequences that need to have a little bit of a fuller or larger size and scope to them, I definitely feel the cinematography is noteworthy. The editing by Christian Wagner, I personally felt was excellent. This film is, for the most part, a really tight, tautly edited movie, and there's a lot of sequences in the film that have a lot of slick, stylish editing to match Michael Bay's slick and stylish directing. One scene in particular that I really love the way it's edited is the heist sequence when Fouché and his men steal the money from the vault. I really love the way that's shot, and I really like the concepts behind the ways that they stole the money with I think it's like luge carts or these kind of things that they use to speed down the tunnels and so on and so forth. It was just a really inspired idea behind the heist sequence and what they're using to complete the heist, because it easily could have just been generic. Oh, let's, you know, blow the door down, grab the money, and run. But that's not what they decided to do, and that's something I really liked about the film, is moments like that. The final action sequence at the airfield is the best action sequence in the film. It's the one that has the best big grand moments of spectacle, with explosions, with car chases, with gunplay. Really like the last action sequence. I've always liked that. I remember catching the ending of this film on TV before I even saw the whole thing, so I knew about it, but I didn't quite piece together exactly what movie it was. I just caught the ending on with the airfield when I was younger on TV, and I was like, "This is so cool!" Like, and then I just it just left my mind, and I couldn't really remember what uh, what film it was until later. But yeah, I really do like that action sequence. The other action sequences, the shootouts, are kind of generic and kind of just, I don't know. I just felt there wasn't a whole lot of energy to them. The car chase on the freeway I thought could have been done a little bit better. But yeah, it's one of those things about the film. I felt that the action, other than the climax at the airfield, wasn't consistently exciting or adrenaline inducing enough for me personally. I've definitely felt that the sequel, Bad Boys 2, was a lot better in that regard. But that's just me personally. I'm not saying the action sequences were bad. It's just they weren't on par with the finale, which that's not necessarily a bad thing because they're trying to save the best for last, and I get it. But I just felt that they could have been a little bit more dynamic to match the dynamic leads throughout. That's just something that I felt the film could have used and definitely could have benefited from. Goes by at a pretty good, like I said, it goes by at a pretty good pace. It's only 119 minutes, so it's not one of those films that really overstays your welcome. And despite the issues I do have with it, I do enjoy the film, and I do find it to be a fun, entertaining action film with some really funny bits of comedy from the two leads. So I really don't know what else to say about Bad Boys other than I definitely do recommend the film if you haven't seen it yet, especially if you like action comedies. It's definitely one of the better ones from this particular decade. And I could see why it has a fan base. I don't love it as much as others do, but I definitely do understand why people really enjoy this one, and I appreciate it, and I do enjoy it. I don't really know what else to say, except thank you for watching my review of Bad Boys, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.